Thank you. Thank you very much, Joe. Thanks to you and to Janice and Henry. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here with you today, and I want to thank you for the great honor that you bestow upon me today. Let me begin by adding my word of thanks to the hard work and very productive work. You know, you can work hard and still not be too productive. But Todd is very productive, and I want to thank him so much for his contributions to our office. Also with me today is Micah Ragland, who tries to put words in my mouth when I'm getting ready to come to a group like this, and he did so today. He put some words here for me to read, and I'm going to honor his hard work, his productive work, by not reading it. And I know that will put me in the good graces with all of you if I don't stand here and read his speech. But I must say that although I accept Joe's kind words about that effort a few months ago when we were trying to get legislation passed that I just thought was just fundamental. None of that could have happened if we did not have your help in getting Judy to join us, not just in my office that morning. That office meeting meant little. But we went downstairs in the basement of the Capitol, and she stood there before my caucus. I can tell you right now, we were teetering. We were not there. We had people who were not too sure how they were going to vote. There were people who were a bit afraid of the issue. But when she finished her talk, and I looked in the faces of those members, I knew then that we were ready to go upstairs and enjoy a victory. And thank you so much for your help in getting her here, and thank you so much for being here today, Judy. Thank you. Now, I know that I had to do that with Judy first because I kept being warned by Michael and Todd. In fact, Todd gave me a 2.5, 3-page single-space memorandum, all of which says, "Be brief." I didn't quite understand why that is, because Todd is always telling me that I don't talk quite enough, that I don't speak up enough. He's keep trying to get me to say a little bit more. Why all of a sudden he's telling me to be brief? And then I found out this morning that I'm really the warm-up act for Senator Kennedy this afternoon. And so I now know why he wants me to be brief, okay? That's all right with me. Being the good Southern gentleman that I am, I'm not going to be upset about being Ted Kennedy's warm-up guy. But seriously, I want to say a few things to you because I consider these issues that we're dealing with to be very, very important issues. Now, inside my caucus, there, as you can imagine, there's great debate. We have a caucus of 233 Democrats. We have a House with full membership, 435 members, and people know that simple math tells you that all you need to get an issue passed is 218 votes. That's all you need. And people might think that if you got 233 people in your caucus, it ought not be all that hard to get to 218. Well, that is before you start dissecting the caucus. And when you start looking behind those numbers, that 233 number, you will find 42 African Americans who make up the Congressional Black Caucus. You'll find 48 Blue Dogs who make up what we call the more conservative wing of our caucus. You'll find 58 New Dems who make up the so-called free trade coalition of our caucus. You'll find 10 Asian Pacific Islanders. You'll find 22 Latinos. And many times, getting those 8 distinct caucus that we have on the same page ain't all that easy. And it's my job as whip to try and help shape legislation, try and help develop an approach that will get us to 218. And we are not finished with these issues yet. Now, a lot of people wonder where I came from when I was elected whip. Newspaper stories were written trying to figure out whether or not I had the intestinal fortitude to be whip, whether or not I could in fact crack the whip. Well, let me tell you a little bit about where I came from. I grew up in the little town of Sumter, South Carolina. I grew up at a time when we were still debating whether or not we would have equal educational opportunities for African Americans. The town of Sumter is just 23 miles from Clyburn, from Summerton, South Carolina, the birthplace of Briggs v. Elliott, one of the 5 cases, in fact, the original case that led to Brown versus the Board of Education of Topeka, Kansas. I grew up listening to my father, a fundamentalist minister, pray every morning for Reverend J. Delane, Harry and Eliza Briggs. I grew up reading headlines in the newspapers of J. A. Delane's church being burned to the ground, for his home being burned, J. A. Delane having to be smuggled out of the state, J. A. Delane, whose son, who carries his name, had to be taken out of school and sent away for safekeeping. I know what it is to be subjected to the wrath of those closed-minded people who do not understand what it is to yearn to be free, what it is to wake up every morning wondering whether or not this is the day that I lose my job because somebody may find out who and what I am, whether or not this is the day that my physical being may get violated because somebody may find out who and what I am. I understand those feelings. I have lived them. I remember when I went away to college. I remember what it was like not to be able to ride a city bus. I remember when I went away to college and we were beginning to challenge those laws, those practices. I can remember what it was like to sit at a lunch counter in the bus station at Orangeburg, South Carolina, having ketchup poured in my head, having my face being spat in, all because I wanted to come off the back of the bus. I know what that's like. I know what it's like just to want to be treated like everybody else. And so, when I came to this Congress, I brought with me those experiences. In 1963, we talk a lot about how we got to where we are. A lot of people think all of this started with the Civil Rights Act of 1964. I know our history, the country's history. Having taught history, I know what it was like to study the decision of Dred Scott, how to study the decision of Plessy versus Ferguson, how to see how we as a country moved through all of those processes trying to get to 1954 and that decision, how to get to legislative activity that started in 1957. A lot of people still believe that when Strom Thurmond conducted his filibuster against the Civil Rights Act, that it was the Civil Rights Act of 1964. No, it wasn't. It was the Civil Rights Act of 1957 when he conducted that filibuster. And that Civil Rights Act, though it was not what we all wanted, that was the year I graduated high school. But Roy Wilkins and others in the NAACP went for that act. And Strom Thurmond thought even that was too much. And we saw people like Ralph Yarborough of Texas, Al Gore Sr. of Tennessee, Southerners who thought that the time had come to stand up for the rights of people they did not look like. I remember what all that was like. And in 1963, when Congress stepped into the act, now a lot of people don't remember 1963 Manpower Development and Training Act. But the Manpower Development and Training Act of 1963 was made what it was because of the Civil Rights Act of 1957. I went to work as the first African American working in the Employment Security Commission in South Carolina back in 1963 as a result of the Manpower Development and Training Act. Because the 1957 Civil Rights Act said certain things needed to be done. This was before the Civil Rights Act of 1964. But after Congress responded to the 57 law with its 63 Manpower Development and Training Act, and then in 1964, we got to the employment, Title VII. We didn't get voting rights. A lot of people said to us, we should not accept the bill, simply because it was not all that we wanted. But a lot of people felt that that was the next step. And so we got the 64 Civil Rights Act without voting. That was before Bloody Sunday. Then came Bloody Sunday. And then we got the Voting Rights Act of 1965. A lot of people do not realize it, but after we got the Civil Rights Act for employment, the Voting Rights Act to vote, we still were not there yet. And then in 1968, we got the Fair Housing Law. And then we got a Voting Rights Act renewed. And it was not until the Voting Rights Act of 1965 was renewed that we got legislation from the Congress that allowed me to be sitting in the United States House of Representatives today. Why? Because the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act of 65 had Section 5, just to review, They did not deal with Section 2 to put in the results test that would make it possible for me to serve in Congress. Now, a lot of people call that gradualism. I don't. I call it incrementalism. And I'm here today to say to you, we've passed hate rights. We're going to get that through. We are going to do ENDA. And I believe that just as Susan Anthony could not see a day when we would have a woman contending for the presidency, just as George White, when he left the Congress in 1901, being the last African American, and he made his famous Phoenix speech, he could not see a Barack Obama. And I can tell you this today, it won't be long before a Todd Metcalf or Joe will run for the presidency of the United States and not worry. That day will come. It will not come tomorrow or the day after. But if you and I continue to work together, if you and I continue to respect each other's roles, continue to support each other's dreams, that day will come. And then those words of that famous song that kept me going back in the 60s, that gave Lyndon Johnson the basis for acting the way he did, knowing full well that when he signed the Voting Rights Act, that he was signing away his party's dominance in my section of the country. But he closed his speech to the country using the words of that song that all of us have learned to admire: we shall overcome.